Hey guys, in this long yappy video, we're going to be discussing two questions I recently got, and I'm going to try to give you the correct answer and show you some documentation and some data on why I'm right and you're wrong. So, people keep commenting, oh, why do you worry about even putting premium in your car? Premium doesn't make any more power. You're better off with regular, etc. And everyone's heard that premium fuel doesn't have any more energy in it than regular fuel, and that's true. However, on modern vehicles, the computer is constantly monitoring engine knock and adjusting ignition timing and fuel maps to maximize your power and efficiency. Putting a more high quality fuel in there that's resistant to knock, right? Pre-ignition detonation, that's what octane means, lets the car run itself harder and more efficiently. So you'll see a lot of new cars are coming out with little asterisks like this saying ratings above or on 91 fuel. If premium fuel is not used, performance will decrease. So that says to get the most horsepower out of this new Lexus, you need to run premium. And car manufacturers are saying this because they know someone's going to buy this car and start running 87 in it, and it's not going to be as fast, and they don't want you to be surprised by that. So that's a Lexus example. Here's a manual from the GR86, which I'm looking at. This is pretty serious in here how they feel about this issue. So if you read here, the engine is designed to operate at maximum performance and efficiency at 93 or higher. If it's not available, you can use as low as 91. There'll be no detriment to the engine. However, you may notice a slight decrease in performance and you may hear some knocking at 91. So this is a naturally aspirated four-cylinder, 200 something horsepower, like 220 I think, horsepower motor, and they still say you must run 91 or higher. And then it says if octane less than 91 is used, you're going to damage your engine and void the warranty. So for everyone that says, oh, they don't know what they're talking about, just put 87 in it, I'm pretty sure the manufacturer knows better than you. And if you read the owner's manual, it's right here. Do not put less than 91 in this car. Now, this is disappointing for me, right? Because if I'm not going to the track with this car, or I'm not going to drive it hard, I want to take it on a little road trip, I'd like to run 87 in it. Even though I take a small hit in fuel economy, a 10% hit in fuel economy, it's not going to make up the difference. It's a lot cheaper. There's a lot bigger difference than 10% between 87 and 91 these days, or 93. So I would like to be able to run a regular gas in this car. However, the manual says you shouldn't do it. Here's another good example of this. If you get the 6.2 liter like an SS Camaro, it says 93 highly recommended. You can use as low as 87. However, it says right here, you're going to have reduced acceleration and fuel economy, and you might have some knocking. So, again, the Camaro manual says, yeah, we'll let you use 87, but be prepared, it's not going to be as smooth, it's not going to be as efficient, and it's not going to be as fast. So, that's three examples. But let me go even further than that and quantify this with some real numbers. So, Car and Driver did a test, if octane matters, with four pretty different random cars: a CRV, an M5 Competition, an F-150, and a Dodge Charger. This chart summarizes the differences between the octanes. Now, this car right here is not a performance car. The manual does not call for high octane. However, putting 93 in it got you 8 more horsepower, and it took off zero point 0.1 seconds in the 0 to 60 and 0.1 seconds in the quarter mile. Fuel economy was 0.3 miles per gallon better. Okay, so that's interesting. A car that isn't technically designed for high octane still saw some improvements with it. Why is that? That's because it's a modern motor that's constantly trying to maximize its efficiency and its power output. Also, it's a turbo motor, so it makes a bigger difference. But that's my point here. Even though this car doesn't call for it and doesn't need it, it still made it a little quicker. Now let's keep going and look at the rest of this. So M5 Competition, it's a $100,000 car, not really relevant to a lot of us, but it picked up 13 horsepower from going to higher octane and a tenth of a second off the quarter mile. That's huge. Now here's the real interesting one. F-150 EcoBoost. This is the high output, the limited, the 450 horsepower EcoBoost. If you're running on 87 octane, which it says in the manual you can do, whatever, that's the minimum in the manual, you're getting 360 horsepower to the wheels. If you had a 93, 380. You're picking up 20 horsepower by running higher octane. That's incredible. 0 to 60 time is dropping by 0.6 seconds if you use a cheap fuel. Quarter mile, 0.5 seconds. That's nuts. And fuel economy, you can see you're getting 0.6 miles per gallon better. So the economy doesn't seem to change very much for any of these. Let's keep going. Dodge Charger RT. This is basically the motor that's in my truck. Different state of tune, but it picked up a significant amount of horsepower. 0 to 60 was the same because it's traction limited because this car is the worst rear suspension in the world and can't put power down to save its life. Mile per gallon, pretty much the same. Quarter mile, pretty much the same. So let's look at this F-150 and calculate the percentage increase in fuel economy running, excuse me, running higher octane fuel. So 17.6 divided by 17. So 3.5% increase in fuel economy. So that's not going to make it for the cost difference. So yeah, if your car can run, if the manual recommends running a minimum octane of 87 in your car, that's going to be the cheapest way to drive it because you're not going to make up the extra cost of fuel with your extra fuel economy. Now, if you need more range, this is going to help your range for sure, right? Getting the most amount of miles out of a tank, but it's not going to help your cost. However, as far as acceleration is concerned, it makes a really big difference. 5.3 seconds 0 to 60 is a very fast truck. 5.9, that's kind of standard. That's like, a Ram or anything else. And you can see the difference here. It's a 20 horsepower difference. So everyone that keeps arguing about that, here's the data. Do some research for yourself. This is a great article to read through if you want more details on it. If you want to find this article, it's called Car and Driver, Is Premium Gas Worth It? Okay, that's question number one I've been annoyed by. Question number two is all-wheel drive systems. So get a lot of questions about car stuff, and everyone likes these small all-wheel drive cars. Now I'm here to tell you that all small all-wheel drive cars are stupid. They don't have to be stupid. Maybe there's a way to make them not stupid, but everyone that's been made so far is stupid. And I'm going to show you why. So all small front-wheel drive cars use transverse motors, meaning the cylinders go 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in between the wheels, and the transmission's on the side. Now, this is a traditional front-wheel drive car setup, and it's stupid because the entire engine and transmission is either in front of the axle center line or very close to being in front of it, which means all the weight is on the front wheels. You see how this looks really unbalanced? That's terrible for handling. You get all kinds of understeer. The rear brakes can't do as much work. It's just bad in general. So what the cheap front-wheel drive cars do is they take a front-wheel drive car and they add on a little, where's the picture? A little afterthought, I call it like a PTO output. So the engine drives the transmission. The transmission always drives the front wheels through these axles. And then, by the way, out the back, here's a little place to hook up a rear drive shaft. So this car does not have a mechanism for disconnecting the front wheels, right? This is a front-wheel drive car with a little add-on gearbox to send some power to the rear. Now, all these manufacturers make these bold claims about can send 100% of the power to the rear wheel, 70-30 bias, all this, they have all these things, right? Well, if you can't disconnect the front wheels, the only way you can send 100% of your power and torque to the rear is if the front wheels are on ice and the back wheels are on pavement. That's a fact. There's no other way to do it. So all these marketing claims are stupid. And this is how every small front-wheel drive car is. And now the question is, why is that? Well, because to make a car small, it makes it better to put the engine and transmission side by side between the wheels. If you turn the engine longitudinal with a drive shaft, the engine takes up more space, the car gets longer, basically. And then you lose some space in the passenger compartment, you need a bigger engine tunnel, so it gets a little more expensive. So small, cheap cars are all made this way just because of geometry. This is how you make a car short, okay? But another example of this is like the Ford Focus RS. This is an Audi TT, but it's the same kind of thing, right? Sideways engine, this has 5 cylinders, transmission on the side, and then power goes to the back. That's a CLA 45S. Golf R is the same way. So here's a diagram of what I'm talking about here. So engine, transmission, drives the front wheels, and then power goes to the rear. Now these all work by having a clutch on the rear differential, the all-wheel drive clutch. So most of the time, the power goes to the front wheels, and then when it needs more grip, it engages this clutch and drives the back wheels. Now, manufacturers have done some tricks in the recent years to try to make them feel more rear-wheel drive. So what they do is they put a taller gear ratio in this back differential than the front differential, this ring and pinion basically. And what that does is it overdrives the rear wheels. So when this clutch is locked solid, you have a different gear ratio here and here. That just sounds bad, right? Because it's creating binding, which is wasting power. So what really happens is this clutch is almost always in a state of slip. So these clutches have gotten really big and really heavy and able to handle this difference in gear ratio. So most of the time, when there's any all-wheel drive going on, this clutch is slipping to make up for the difference in gear ratios. But what the overdrive does is it lets you have a drift condition. So when this clutch locks solid and you put the power down, the back wheels spin faster than the front wheels a little bit, which gives you a momentary power shift to the rear. But as soon as you break traction, it's back to 50-50 at best. So this isn't a real 70-30 split or whatever they claim because it's artificial, right? It's just when you break traction you get that. The rest of the time this clutch has to slip, and it only lets you have a small drift angle. So if you watch all the videos of the Golf R drifting, it looks pathetic because it can only drift a little bit. The other trick that they do is they have clutches back here. They're not shown in this diagram, but they'll disconnect one wheel and send the power to the other wheel to help with understeer, because obviously they're going to understeer because the entire engine is hanging off in front of your front wheels. So the weight distribution is bad. So these are all like little band-aids these manufacturers do to try to make it handle better. And that's why small, cheap all-wheel drive cars are stupid, because they're very compromised. Let me show you what a good all-wheel drive system looks like. So here's the BMW xDrive in like my 3 Series I had. You have an engine that's facing the right direction, longitudinal, and then it goes to a transmission, and then it goes to a transfer case. That transfer case is shown up here. So the power goes straight through to the rear wheels all the time. So it handles like a rear-wheel drive car. But when you need more grip, this is a clutch right here, electric motor controlled clutch, really quickly closes and sends power to the front wheels for like a launch, or when you hit some water and you need to accelerate or whatever. So this car handles like a rear-wheel drive car, except for when you need the front wheels. That's the opposite of how all the cheap, small all-wheel drive cars work. I say cheap, cheaper, right? All of these cars are expensive. But they're based on a cheap car is what I'm saying. So this car is designed from the ground up to be rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. All these other cars are designed to be front-wheel drive, which is a cheaper setup. That's why I say cheap cars. But I mean, a Golf R is expensive, and so is a CLA 45, and so is an Audi. So they're not really that cheap. But this is the superior system in my opinion, because you can have a real slide. The front wheels can be disengaged. When you put it in drift mode and like an M3, it actually just completely opens this clutch and you have a rear-wheel drive car. You can see the clutch right here. So that's what we all really want. That's like the holy grail of an all-wheel drive system. The other way to do it, to have a real 70-30 split, which Toyota claims they're getting with the GR Corolla, which is bullshit, is like an Audi crown gear setup. So the Audi, this is all inside the transmission. So you don't realize that there's a drive shaft in there, but there is. It's actually kind of similar to the BMW, where the power comes from the engine here, through the transmission, up through this drive shaft into a differential. The thing I don't like about the Audis is, here's your axle line. So your whole engine, even on the longitudinal Audis, sits in front of the axle line. But this is still better than like the RS3, for instance, where the whole engine and transmission are in front of the axle line. At least the transmission weight's behind it. But anyways, the point here I wanted to make is that this is a center differential. And it's called a crown gear differential, where the two side gears, these would be the planetaries, are different sizes. So more torque goes to the rear because of it's an asymmetrical differential. It's a really smart way to do it. This car can't completely unlock the front end like the BMW can, but it does have a real torque split. So for Toyota to do what they say they're for Toyota to achieve what they say they're doing with the GR Corolla, they would need something like this. This is the only way to get a real all-wheel drive system that has a rear-biased feel. The way BMW is doing it is just with a clutch. Engaging the front end is needed, which really isn't a real rear-biased thing. It's like a truck. It's rear-wheel drive, and then you can engage the front when you want it. This is more like a pickup truck setup, and I love it. This is a real, true all-wheel drive system with a rear bias. Now, Audi does this on their bigger cars with the V6s, like the RS6 and stuff, and on their smaller, cheaper cars, TTRS, RS3, they use the halodeck system. Halodeck system is the same thing that's in the Golf R. That's this setup right here, where you have a front-wheel drive car and you have an afterthought rear differential setup with a clutch on it. Very not premium. Here's another example of that. So Mercedes makes a CLA 45S, which is a halodeck system. However, on their bigger, more expensive cars, they have this setup, which, as you can tell, looks pretty similar to BMW's and the one that's on the big Audis. So you have a transmission facing this way, little transfer case back here with the center diff, and then a drive shaft that comes forward to the front diff. The front diff is separate from the transmission. That is key here. That gives the car the ability to disengage the front wheels. The Audi's is also like that. It doesn't look like it because the front diff is in the transmission, but it is separated from that drive line. So that's the kind of all-wheel drive system I prefer. If you want more information on this, Engineering Explained has a good all-wheel drive comparison, like different types of all-wheel drive. So check out his videos. But basically, I'm excited about the GR Corolla because it's a manual all-wheel drive, and we don't really have any of those anymore. So that's really cool. But it's still going to handle like a front-wheel drive car, and you can put all the Band-Aids you want in a fancy rear differential. If it's designed to be a front-wheel drive car from the get-go and you add on rear-wheel drive, it's always going to be compromised. And just why not buy a M3 X-Drive? Well, yeah, it's $80,000, that's why. So this is a good way to keep the price down and have all-wheel drive, and it does fix one of the problems that front-wheel drive cars have. When you launch a front-wheel drive car, the front wheels just spin because the weight transfer goes back, which unloads the front wheels. This does let you send power to the rear wheels, so you get a really good 0 to 60 time. This helps your quarter-mile time a lot. So in a straight line, this system works pretty good. The problem is when you get into corners, it's really compromised. So hopefully that was helpful, and I know it's a long video, but I tried to show some good diagrams and some actual data here to explain this stuff to you guys. This is stuff I like to research for myself anyways, and I've done this research a while ago, but I like to share that information with other people.